Today I got some Coastal Plains chert from Georgia, I assume. Let's see. Yeah, just to make sure. From my friend Jeff. Okay. So let's see. I already made a biface yesterday experimenting with this stuff. I had a little bit of trouble up here. This is raw. Let's see. I didn't measure this one yet. 7 1/4 by 3 1/2. It does nap okay when in the raw state, but like I said, I had trouble up here, so I'm going to heat treat it. I got another batch. I got all the flakes that came off of this in the heat treat right now, experimenting with it to see what temperature it needs. I looked online and it says online that 400 to 450 is good enough to heat treat this stuff. So I'll take it up to 400 a little bit later on tonight. It's still drying out. It had a little bit of water in it, I could tell, because there are pockets in this sometimes, and when I flake into a pocket, you can see the water come out. You know, these voids and little pockets that contain water. So it did contain water, so I need to make sure it gets dried out. Now, to eliminate this, the easiest way is just to make it more narrow. Maybe not from this side, but take down this side and shoot flakes in. But there's a double obstacle. There's a difference in consistency here, so flakes are not traveling as well as they should be across here. And there's too many opportunities for a step fracture on this side. I already tried hitting in from this way and it didn't work, so the only other option is to remove some material from here and then shoot inward there. But once I figure out the temperature for the heat treat, I'll heat treat this and see if I can run a flake both here and here, both from this side into the biface. Well, I don't know. Is it? From somewhere, I probably have to make it more narrow. In any case, from both sides to get the best opportunity to thin that down. Or I could just grind it down and get something from the hardware store where I can grind this down and then try to flake over it. It's much easier to do it that way, so you don't lose as much width. So if I grind it down after it's heat treated, grind it down and then shoot a flake, the platform doesn't need to be as stout, and I don't need to remove as much of the edge to run a flake across heat treat, especially if I grind it down so it's nice and level, and all I got to do is remove the tool marks. Okay. Or I might just offer it raw like that in the auction. I don't know, whatever I have time for. Okay. So Coastal Plains, I have napped it many times before, but they've always been small flakes and nothing large like this. These are the largest pieces I've ever received. This one's about 8 by 4. No guarantee that it'll stay large, but I'll try. And I like the flakes that come off of these. Yeah, I have napped a bunch of this before, but it's always been small flakes. Okay. Yeah, it naps quite well. And it's got a nice translucency to it. A nice amber color or honey color or beeswax color. Very, very nice. So I have not been posting videos much this week so far because I have been napping, but mainly for the heat treat, just generating flakes for the heat treat. I got to get all my raw stuff cooked. Yeah. This stuff is very nicely cooperative for spalling. Now, the smaller flakes that I have napped of this material in the past have all been heat treated. I don't like napping small points of this stuff in the raw state. The large spalls seem to be fairly easy to do in the raw state, so that's not too bad. But when you get down to delicate notching and serrations and thinning, it's kind of a hassle to do this while it's raw, to do the delicate stuff, because it is on the tough side. It's tougher than root beer chert, just as a comparison. It seems like it might nap as well as root beer chert, but it doesn't. It's a little bit tougher. This reminds me of the stuff that comes out of Belize. I had a feeling it was the same stuff, but wasn't quite sure because I was just napping small pieces. Yeah, very nice flakes. And you can see that pocket there has water in it. Now, stone is porous, so some of you might be thinking that the rock within stone is millions of years. I mean, the water within stone is millions of years old, but it's not. It's probably only as old as the latest rainfall, because rocks are porous. Water goes in, water goes out. Rocks are porous. Oh yes. Some more porous than others. Some not very porous at all, like obsidian. I don't think that can absorb water at all. That's going to make a nice arrowhead because it's got different colors in it. Kind of a challenging piece because of that big old hinge right there. I can kind of see two approaches to get to it. I can strike it from here in this way, or I can strike it from this side and peel off flakes that way. I'd rather do this one first. Well, not there. Let's see. This one here first and see what I can do here. I usually don't like to set up really nice platforms because most of the time I just end up crushing them. But this stuff is more cooperative than a lot of other stuff that I've used or that I've napped at this stage. This is very cooperative at this stage. So this might work. I might be able to send a big flake in here and not crush the platform that I tried to carefully prepare. Well, it almost traveled far enough, but you can see what I mean by it cooperating. Not much crushing at all. It was able to generate a pretty substantial flake with not very much preparation. And that's going to be kind of cool if I can skim off that cortex. Yeah, the cortex is kind of powdery, but some of it's pretty solid. So I can try for another flake up this ridge here. Let's see. Why did I do that? So I could lower the edge that way, so I can send a flake here first and then a flake that way. I want to clear up that step fracture. Let's see if I can clear it up by hitting here and going in that way. Nope. Yeah, it's going to be kind of stubborn, so I'll have to wait. I'm going to hit the face of that, see what happens. So by hitting the face of it, it makes it a less of an obstacle if I can take some flakes off the top. Of course, it ruined any potential spalls from that area if I would take a big flake the other direction. But I'd rather have a smaller obstacle at this point. That was pretty big. That one kind of tried to do what I wanted, but it didn't reach quite far enough. I hate to hit the tip, but that's one of the best ways to get to that part. I don't know. Yeah. I would have to hit that weight harder than I would like, so I tried to send a long flake into there, but it didn't really go. All right. Some of you would have probably taken these flakes much earlier, but I want to make sure the ends are thin first. It's always been an advantage for me anyway to have the ends, the tip and the base thin first before I hit the middle. Still did not run quite as far as I would like, but it's not bad. Not bad at all. That was a hard strike, and I just barely tapped it on the platform, and it was just barely enough stone to seat the billet onto instead of the cortex. Yeah, you can't nap through the cortex very easily. You got to get into the stone at least a little bit. All right. This is the sweating stage because it's getting thinner. All right. It's getting thinner and you can't stop hitting it extremely hard yet. I have to still continue to hit it extremely hard. Like those strikes on the side were very hard strikes. I can do the same thing up here, or it's not going to go anywhere if I don't. That almost didn't go as far as I wanted. Well, yeah, it actually didn't go as far. And I hit it pretty hard. That one I did not hit hard. Probably should have. But I'm too afraid to hit it. I'm not really used to the material yet. Even though I've made one biface already, still not used to it. Because there's variations in different stones. Of the same type, there's variation. This might look exactly the same, but chances are, with my luck, it's not exactly the same. And as the middle gets thinner, I gotta make sure the ends stay thin in proportion. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, this is definitely the sweating stage. I'm sweating already. Hold on. I'm needing to hit that really, really hard, but I don't want to. It's just subconscious. It's resisting the strikes that I need. So I'm not getting the flakes to carry as long as they should be. But I'd rather have a thick biface than a broken one in half. And I have broken a lot of stuff in half this week. I'll show you one I did a little bit earlier. Well, yesterday or the day before. That one hurt. So I don't want that to happen to this. I was not expecting the other one to break. You know, because you hit really, really hard and everything is going okay. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, it just snaps. That's going to be a little difficult to manage there, because I'm going to have to thin that quite a bit. That scooped out a little bit too much because I hit it a little too hard that time. Sometimes not hard enough, sometimes a little too hard. A little too hard scoops it out too much. Yeah, that one was pretty hard, but not hard enough. It didn't travel very far. I did measure this before I started, right? I'll take another measurement in a little bit. I'm kind of a minimalist on edge removal. Okay, I don't like removing too much of the edge because I like to preserve the width as much as I can, because I'm ending up losing a lot of width to get it thinned. But if I've already lost the width and it's thick in the middle, I can't thin it. You know what I mean? Some guys can, but I find that I need some width to give me the options that come up, that don't come up if it's more narrow. Yeah, it can't be too bumpy. Let's see. If you guys have headphones, hold on, I'm going to turn the machine on, the sander. Better. That should be smoother so that I'm not bending the biface if I catch it too hard. Okay. Because that had to be a really hard hit. And that was pretty hard. That was okay. Yeah. As long as it goes to halfway, I'm all right. Very bad. Yeah, it's going to have to go pretty narrow, I think. Yeah, to get rid of that. Oh well. And it wasn't supposed to do that with a smooth. When I smoothed the front of the billet, it was supposed to avoid those bites. So I took a chance on a strike that would produce a bite. Normally, with a rough billet, if it was rough, it would produce a bite much more easily. But since it was smooth, I said, nah, it's not going to produce a bite. Chink. Sure enough, took a bite out of it. Let's see. Much better. So why does it act better if you smooth it? Because it allows the drag to happen with much more distance. It'll drag a lot more. That way you're in contact with the platform for a longer period of time. If it's got bumps in it, in here, sometimes it'll bump and skip and lose contact with the edge. It'll come back, but it'll be bumpy, and that's enough to cause a shorter flake. If it chatters, you're losing contact with the edge. If it's smooth, a smooth drag across, you're maintaining contact. That's what you need to generate a consistent force to propagate that wave of force for that fracture. Yeah, without chatter or anything. So that worked well. Chatter is just a bunch of weird stuff going on with the flake. It looks like there's ripples where there shouldn't be any ripples. Now that one took a bite out. Those bites always hurt. If you can get a long flake with a bite, it's sometimes not too bad, but if you get a short flake with one of those bites, that just bites, yeah, so to speak. Alright, that felt much better, yeah. And these are hard hits. But it's sliding. It's hard, but it's sliding. That way it doesn't catch and bend. If it slides, it's not catching and bending. And it's different from gouging. If you have a round billet, I don't have anything with a round end to it, or like this. If you have something round like that, what it's doing is gouging out the flake. There's not much slide in there. It's mostly just hit, and you're trying to maintain contact with the platform over a very small sliding area, and it produces like a gouge, like if you're gouging wood. A gouging flake, which looks more like this one here, that's just got a scoop out, instead of a flat flake like this one. This one's a flat flake, so you can see it's hard to gouge out a flat flake like this. When you gouge out flakes, they end up being like this one here, that's got a bulb on it. Not always, right? You can get the same type of flake with both types of tools, but for the most part, you can get flatter flakes with a smoother, flatter billet. Flat billet, flat flakes. Okay, flat end, flat flakes. Yeah, flat end, flat flakes. There's hardly any bulb of percussion. Hardly any. Of course, that did shatter a little bit. So the bulb shattered. So you can't see it. But even though it shattered, there wasn't much to begin with. Now I got to thin down the ends proportionally because the middle is getting thin now. I hit it with the rough spot, with the rough side. I made a mistake. That's on me. That was purely my mistake. I hit it with the rough end, so it bit a huge amount. Okay, I gotta not make that mistake again. Hold on, headphone guys. I'm gonna grind this. Alright, so that hurt quite a bit. Didn't hurt me painfully, it's just the profile is messed up now. Profile. The outline or the profile. Yeah. Messed up. Okay. So I ground down both ends so in case I make the mistake and use the wrong end, it won't happen. The same mistake won't happen, hopefully. You can still get bites with a smooth face on the billet, but it's less common. Much less common. That didn't go very well at all. That was supposed to carry all the way. Okay. It must be tougher there, right? It must be, right? That's my excuse. That's why I'm getting all these steps. It's just tougher in that area. Can I heat treat it when it's this thick? Probably, but I don't want to take a risk. A heat treat will even out a lot of these differently, or different properties in these different areas. If that's what it was. I took away the steps just to install a new one. That's typical of what I do. Yeah, pretty typical. Even at my stage of napping, I've been napping for a while, 10 years or so. I still do that. I clear out all the step fractures, and then one more little tap I think is going to smooth it out, and I end up installing another step fracture. You might say, well, how are you smoothing it out when you've already smoothed it out? I mean, removing ridges, just hitting on a ridge and hoping, you know, just thinking it's going to travel, the flake will travel down a ridge instead of going to the side and then start gouging into material it's not supposed to go into. Smoothing it out for me is, you know, hitting down these ridges and making it smoother. Not necessarily hitting a flake in and smoothing it, although that is also smoothing. Clear as mud? No? Yes? Good. Like that was supposed to smooth it out, but it didn't do it. It's a partially detached flake. So now I gotta think of another way to get that, because it took another turn. Like it's supposed to go this way, but it turned that way. I didn't strike it inward this way. I struck it that way, so it should have gone that way, but it wanted to go this way. Is that one of the quirky things about the stone? It could be the stone that wants to do that, but it could also be the fact that I ground it. It's flatter now, and I'm used to it being a little more rounded. With all those lumps and stuff on it, it was pretty rounded. It could be that little subtle difference in the flatness of the billet that causes the flakes to go in different directions. Alright, so that was okay. So what did it do? That one went over the top, connected there somewhere. Did that install? That did not install the step fracture. That just kind of broke it from the other end. Yeah, I can get rid of those. I can get rid of that step fracture pretty easy in that one too. They're close to the edge. Now, when they occur in the middle, that's when it gets a little bit difficult. A little bit more difficult. Alright, so this stage now is a lot of indirect percussion. Why? Because I don't want to, I can hit it definitely with regular percussion, but right now I'm going to do some indirect just to get the tip shaped a little bit better. If I can. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, it's risky to hit that, but I'm going to hit it anyway. Yeah, it's risky because it could just continue to go, and that one didn't. It didn't continue, so that was all right. This one, I don't know. It might just hinge. No. Sometimes they just pop right out this way. They'll hinge and they'll curve and come up, but this one continued. So I'll just leave it for another strike somewhere. I gotta fix that tip. There's too much mass on this side. Let's see. There's too much mass up on here. But I'm afraid to take it down because it's too close to the time that I've been direct percussioning it. I would rather have more indirect percussion time under my belt right now instead of all this direct percussion stuff that I just now did. So I'm going to have to tiptoe through the tulips more with more thinking so I don't break the whole tip off. And usually when I try not to break the whole tip off, it breaks the whole tip off. But if I have more indirect percussion time under my belt, there's less chance of breaking the whole tip off. Okay, so I think that worked all right. That's the only thing about the indirect percussion right there. It's just that, you know, you transition from one to the other, from direct percussion to indirect, and try to do something really, really delicate with indirect. A lot of times it ends up in disaster. I'm trying to make the surface more convex. The surface has to be convex. Alright, so I'm going to take down a lot of this bulkiness on the edge and then regrind it, and also reshape it a little bit and then regrind it so that I can take a direct percussion strike into this area. Flatten out the obstacle a little bit. The ideal thing would be to get a good flake to go all the way across and catch that step fracture there. It's going to take a very fast, very hard hit in an area where I cannot be hitting hard and fast. But I'm going to have to hit hard and fast in this area. There's no way around it, or I can't get that out of there. And indirect percussion probably won't do it because it's too big of a flake. But the flake that is required is too big for the indirect. Did it do it? Well, if it was heat treated, it probably would have. But it's good enough. Yeah, I can deal with that. There's not much holding that step fracture in there anymore. Yeah, I gotta be careful with these hits. I can't be hitting too hard on some of these areas. I just had a guy recently ask me, how do I maximize? Another question on maximizing the stone that he's got. I usually don't tell new guys that new guys are not able to maximize. You're just not able to maximize. If you're new and you're trying to maximize, you'll end up doing just the opposite. You'll end up with more small flakes than if you started out just snapping. If you try to maximize, you'll end up with more mistakes than if you were just to nap it. But I didn't tell him that because it's just something you got to learn on your own. Yeah, because no matter how many times you tell someone, you won't be able to maximize it as a new guy. He'll think that's BS. You just got to learn on your own. You will not be able to maximize as a new guy. You won't be able to maximize the stone that you've got. If that's what you're focused on. Now, if you're just focused on getting flakes and not getting step fractures and not worried about maximizing, you'll end up with more bifaces and more success than if you were just focusing on maximizing. Now, why did I grind the edge so much? It's because it's a shortcut to taking more off. It can work. I think it will work with this material to just grind it instead of removing more and creating a better striking area. Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. I can usually get 2 out of 3, so I'm not going to try for another one in that area yet. Yeah, I could try. See if I had 1 success, 2 success. I was going to try there, but the third attempt is usually not successful. Not if you do it straight in a row, because you tend to get overconfident. So you go somewhere else and look for a better spot first. So even if you're cocky, even if you think, yeah, okay, it's going good now, you can still get a good result if it's a good place to strike. This one is kind of challenging because the platform is not all that great. It's kind of slanted. You know, instead of being in line with the center line, it's slanted this way. So I got to hit kind of slanted. When that happens, it tends to dig in to this side. If you hit it to match the slant, the flake tends to go to this side. With a step fracture, it may widen out both sides, but it tends to dig into that side more. That could be, you know, what's happening down here too. So in a perfect world, the platform striking area is in the same line with the center line of your piece, but this one is not. This one is slanted. I'm going to keep it slanted anyway. I am going to hit it, but I'm going to make sure I isolate it a little bit to make it more of a no-brainer. To make it more of a successful looking platform. I don't know if it actually will help much, but we'll see. Yeah, it's not going to hit the edges on the side, so that's good. So that just dug out a little bit. It wasn't too bad. It's supposed to go further, of course, but it wasn't too bad. Now the base is a little bit too thick. I woke up with a strange feeling and a stomachache this morning. I think I'm dehydrated, but I drank a lot of water. One of my daughters says it takes like 3 weeks to get rehydrated. That's what her coach used to tell her in soccer. 3 weeks. When you're severely dehydrated and you try to rehydrate, it takes weeks to get to normal again? I don't know. But anyway, I think that's what happened. I have not been drinking much water lately. So that's getting thinner. That was a good flake. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 good flakes on that side. I do pay attention to that kind of stuff. It's superstitious, yeah, I know. But it does affect the way you knap. Yeah, it's superstitious, but it's going to affect it because anything your mind's telling you will end up in your napping. It'll show itself in some way. Come on. Not supposed to. Yeah, I don't like those bites at all. Yeah, don't like them. But see, I back off a little bit and I don't go far enough. That hurt, especially at this stage of the game. That's why it's sweaty. That's why this stage is a sweat stage, because you always risk that. Yeah. And I did that with a smooth billet and with metal. It wasn't a soft billet, rough, like most nappers will tell you. Those things happen with a rough billet. No, it was smooth. And it's metal. It wasn't a rough, soft billet. Yeah, that hurt a lot. All right. Oh well. I should probably heat treat it now. It'll help to prevent some of that stuff from happening. Yeah. I'm trying to remember, did I grind that enough? Let's see. It would help if I could find that flake. Did I throw it? Let's see. I don't see it. All right. Yeah, I ground that down a lot. It should have broken right there, but it broke way too high. But you can see it's the center line on both sides. If you connect this and that, that's the center line of the piece. A lot of times if you drop the platform way below center line, it'll break below center line. But in this case, I guess that little bulge right there was just too stout. I was hoping that bulge would help push it further, but instead it just caused it to break higher up. See that bulge right there? That's exactly where I hit it. It was a no-brainer. I couldn't miss. And I thought, yeah, it would snap a little bit like a roundish area. You know, a circular flake scar or circular crack, but lower. Like starting maybe from here to there. Not that high. You still make a nice blade, but you know, you lose a lot of width. For someone who doesn't like losing a lot of width, that's just terrible. All right, so It was 3.5. It went down to 3. Lost a 1/2 inch just on that one strike. So let's say you're working on a commissioned piece and you need to make a 3.5 inch wide piece and you get a bite like that. The whole thing is wasted. You got to make something totally different. And let's say you spent a lot of money on these. How do I know? I don't know. Has it happened to me? I spent a lot of money on stuff that doesn't work out just because of one mistake on the edge. Yep. This one, it doesn't matter because I don't. This is not a commissioned piece. This is just so I can thin it down and heat treat it and end up with a nice blade afterwards. This is not a commission. I can stick it in the brokes and bifaces and just offer it just like this. But I'm going to try to make something out of it. Since this is some of my favorite material, let's see. Long flake, yes? No, no long flake. Yeah, I'm going to take down the width a lot. That's one thing about using direct percussion to try to preserve the width. It doesn't really preserve the width very easily. Some guys can do it. Some guys can stay wide even though they're using a lot of direct percussion. For me, the odds are against me. I usually end up making a big, gigantic indirect percussion striker and doing most of my width preservation with indirect percussion. Still trying to get those long flakes with direct percussion. Yeah. So yeah, I'll lose a bunch of width as I usually do, and I end up with 2.5 inches is my normal width. That I found out, no matter how long it is. 2.5. This is almost 8. It'll end up being about 2.5. No matter how long it is, yeah. With a thickness proportional to the length. Let's see, I'm feeling like, yeah, it's about an hour. I feel like stopping right here because I'm hitting obstacles in every spot for the removal of the lumps. So when that happens, heat treat helps to overcome those obstacles. Because right now the rawness or the raw state of this is going to work against me. I'm going to have to hit it really hard to get it to clear a lot of these obstacles, but that's the opposite of what I need to do because that happens. This happens because it's hit way too hard with platforms and striking areas that are way too robust. But that's what you need to run long flakes. But with a heat treat, these platforms don't need to be as robust. Even though it's more snappable with a heat treat, it's proportionately easier, much more easy to do. The thinning, easy to do with heat treat. The platforms can be smaller and your flakes are longer. Less stout, but you can get longer flakes. With raw, you need stout flakes with more of a chance of breaking it. I'll figure out the formula eventually, and I'll write it down mathematically. There is a formula that can be derived from the idea that it's more difficult to run long flakes when it's raw on some pieces compared to heat treating it. And it has to do with the amount of force required and the amount of force that can be resisted by the workpiece. Yeah, raw can resist a lot of bending in most cases. But there are some cases where not only does it not resist bending very well, the platforms need to be more stout than average. In those cases where it just won't run a flake unless you've got an extremely stout platform, and yet it breaks easier this way, it's always going to be snapping on you. Always. Of course, there's always that fine line that you can walk, that little tightrope, and get thin workpieces from stuff that breaks easy this way but requires extremely stout platforms and extremely hard hits. There is a fine line you can walk, and eventually over time you can tweak it to where you can be skillful enough to do that. But most guys, especially in the beginning, they are never going to get it in the beginning, and they're going to snap every single piece. And this is kind of like one of those instances. It doesn't really break this way easily, but it requires a lot of force to get the flakes to run long. The platforms, I probably could go a little bit less robust and still get a long flake when in the raw state using a billet. I think I could tweak it down to that level, but I'd rather heat treat it. That way I don't have to experiment with it as much. All right, long-winded explanation, but I hope that helps. Like I said, I felt weird this morning when I woke up. I don't really feel like doing videos, so I'll do another one if I feel alright. If not, that's it for today. Alrighty.